Well, more trouble for the former president in the state of Georgia with some revealing new video. It shows several political operatives with ties to Trump were allowed access to an elections office in Coffee County, Georgia, with help from a local Republican official who was trying to get Trump reelected.
Now, this new surveillance video was taken on January 7th, 2021. That's what you're looking at here. The same day Coffee County's voting system was breached. The video shows then County GOP Chairwoman Kathy Latham escorting a group of computer technicians reportedly sent by Trump attorney Sidney Powell into the office. That's what you're watching here. Latham, along with 15 other Georgia Republicans, is under investigation for attempting to overturn the election results by supporting a false slate of electors that would have certified the presidential election results in favor of Trump.
Well, David Levine, an elections integrity fellow at Alliance for Securing Democracy, joining us now to go more in depth about what we're learning here in this video. Thanks once again for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
It's great to be with you.
All right, so this is in your wheelhouse, your bread and butter issue of election integrity. So for folks who are not following the drip, drip, drip of all these multiple scandals and investigations, in layman's terms, explain what we're seeing in this new video and if it's a cause for concern and why.
Sure. You know, what we have seen since the 2020 presidential election occurred is the unearthing of more pieces of information that show the lengths to which former President Donald Trump and some of his allies went to in order to try and subvert that election process. We saw that the former president called for state election officials, like the Secretary of State, to find votes that didn't exist. And we've seen countless examples of the president's former allies seeking to sow chaos and doubt by trying to gain unauthorized access to voting software and other pieces of the election infrastructure in a whole host of states, including in jurisdictions that might be more favorable to the lies that the president continues to espouse. And this example here in Coffee County is just the latest, right? An example of some of his supporters being able to try and gain unauthorized access to voting system software in an effort to sow further doubt about the 2020 election.
So, taking my journalist hat off now, and I am just the average person watching at home. I see this video. My next question is going to be, okay, well, this is in Coffee County. Where else did this happen? How many situations are like this? How many different surveillance videos will we find will kind of be unearthed in this process? It was somebody that has your career, that is really intent on making sure that our elections are fair and protected. How can the average person have any faith that this is going to be fixed moving forward?
Sure. Well, I think a couple things are worth stepping back and acknowledging. One was, in spite of all the challenges that existed, right? Foreign adversaries trying to interfere in the election, domestic actors trying to interfere in the election, some insider threats like what we saw in Coffee County. The 2020 election was a resounding success. And that was in part because of the safeguards that large parts of the country had in place. And, I think one of the things that's really important here in Georgia was that Georgia actually went to a paper-based voting system and recounted the ballots on multiple occasions to verify the accuracy of that election. And so, one of the things that I think is really important to note for our average viewer is that when you have paper-based voting systems or paper ballots that you can go back to count, in the event that folks are trying to tamper with the voting system, or even in the event that a voting system, right, becomes inoperable because of some technical error, you have a way of being able to verify and validate those results. And Georgia was an example of a state that took a number of measures in the run-up to 2020 to help ensure that if there were any issues, we could still validate those results. And so I think, what folks ought to be sort of looking at are, how can we ensure that the votes we cast are validated and verified on the back end? And Georgia went to a paper-based voting system and then verified those results in the aftermath of the election to help ensure that was the case. And I'm hopeful that for those places that still don't have paper-based voting systems and don't have robust post-election tabulation procedures, that they'll look at this incident and have further incentive to try and take similar actions.
And to that end, though, that's why there is growing concern about the number of election deniers in our country who are advancing in races for governor or secretaries of state, because these are the people with their hands directly over the machinery of how we conduct our elections. That's why you're seeing that discussion take place. Also here in Georgia, we know that the DA of Fulton County has her own investigation, an aggressive one, to say the least, looking at election interference here. We'll see ultimately if that investigation and this new video, if those two things ultimately intersect. We don't know just yet, but certainly it speaks to election interference, which she's looking deeply into. But help me understand this issue. Whether it was fake electors going to D.C. or whether it was these folks going into the room to tamper with the machines, intellectually speaking, what did they think they were going to accomplish 2 months after the election? Did they really think the National Archives were going to go, oh, wait a minute, everyone in the media had it wrong? Trump actually won. Oh, okay. Are they going to go into the Georgia tamper with the machine and the Secretary of State is going to be like, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. This actually, this was an easily catchable potential crime in the making. What did they think they were actually going to get away with?
Well, I think a couple of things are worth stepping back and noting, right? One thing that's really important is, in spite of the fact that the 2020 election was called, right, the most successful election in U.S. history, by the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, and that folks such as former Attorney General Bob Barr said there was no evidence of widespread fraud that would have altered the results. What we saw was, following the 2020 election, is that a lot of mis and disinformation around that election has led to erosion in confidence. And we now have a large segment of the population that believes falsely that the 2020 election was stolen. We now see a number of folks running for office, as you pointed out, who are running on the notion that the 2020 election was stolen and pushing for policies that are not based, right, on facts. They're based on half-truths or just simple falsehoods, right? We see election deniers pushing to hand count ballots in large jurisdictions, which could frankly simply be chaotic when we think about the integrity of our elections. And so, I think what we see here are folks who were willing to go to almost any means to try and sabotage an election and to overturn the will of the people. And, there are an awful lot of ways to do that. And this is one way to do that. And I think this underscores the fact that American democracy continues to be under assault. And that's why it's really important that the broader public is looking to support those who are defending our elections to help ensure that we continue to run free and fair elections going forward.
All right. Dave Levine, Elections Integrity Fellow at Alliance for Securing Democracy. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.